Hello again, this is Whiskey Whispers, and today I wanted to continue my readings. I won't be doing poetry today, but I thought I would do a reading of a favorite short story of mine. This is a story by Jorge Borges from his kind of magnum opus collection of short stories, Labyrinths. The story is entitled The Circular Ruins. For anybody who's not familiar with Borges' work, well, you should be, because he's outstanding. And he was an Argentine writer, and he wrote primarily in the surrealistic and magical realist mode. He was actually one of the first very well-known magical realist writers, and he's influenced countless authors and filmmakers really since his time. In magical realism, a writer often creates an entirely realistic world that has elements of the fantastic or the supernatural that intrude upon it, almost without comment. Gabriel Garcia Marquez was famous for this. He wrote a story called The Very Old Man with Enormous Wings, which details the everyday life of a pueblo in South America, into which a very old man with enormous wings falls one day. And people are obviously very interested in the old man, but they don't really comment on the fact that he's extraordinary. Their lives just kind of continue. And in The Circular Ruins, Borges comments on one of the common themes in his work, which is the rejection of objective reality. Magical realist authors in general, and Borges in specific, were very interested in the notion that what we see, what we believe we know, is not necessarily the truth, and that reality is malleable. And there are a multiplicity of perspectives through which we can view the lenses of history, the lens of reality, that which is going on around us, that which we believe we understand about ourselves. So I don't want to give too much about this story away, so I'll just get into it. I'd be happy to have a conversation with anybody who would like to. And obviously this is going to be a softly spoken reading. Again, this is The Circular Ruins by Jorge Luis Borges. No one saw him disembark in the unanimous night. No one saw the bamboo canoe sink into the sacred mud. But in a few days, there was no one who did not know that the taciturn man came from the south, and that his home had been one of those numberless villages upstream in the deeply cleft side of the mountain, where the Zend language has not been contaminated by the Greek, and where leprosy is infrequent. What is certain is that the gray man kissed the mud, climbed up the bank with pushing aside, probably without feeling, the blades which were lacerating his flesh, and crawled, nauseated and blood-stained, up to the circular enclosure crowned with a stone tiger or horse, which sometimes was the color of flame, and now was that of ashes. The circle was a temple which had been devoured by ancient fires, profaned by the miasmal jungle, and whose god no longer received the homage of men. The stranger stretched himself out beneath the pedestal. He was awakened by the sun high overhead. He was not astonished to find that his wounds had healed. He closed his pallid eyes and slept, not through weakness of flesh, but through determination of will. He knew that this temple was the place required for his invincible intent. He knew that the incessant trees had not succeeded in strangling the ruins of another propitious temple downstream, which had once belonged to gods now burned and dead. He knew that his immediate obligation was to dream. Toward midnight, he was awakened by the inconsolable shriek of a bird. Tracks of bare feet, some figs, and a jug warned him that the man of the region had been spying respectfully on his sleep, soliciting his protection or afraid of his magic. He felt a chill of fear, and sought out a sepulchral niche in the dilapidated wall where he concealed himself among unfamiliar leaves. The purpose which guided him was not impossible, though supernatural. He wanted to dream a man. He wanted to dream him in minute entirety and impose him on reality. This magic project had exhausted the entire expanse of his mind. If someone had asked him for his name or to relate some event of his former life, he would not have been able to give an answer. This uninhabited, ruined temple suited him, for it contained a minimum of visible world. The proximity of the workmen also suited him, for they took it upon themselves to provide for his frugal needs. The rice and fruit they brought him were nourishment enough for his body, which was consecrated to the sole task of sleeping and dreaming. At first, his dreams were chaotic. Then, in a short while, they became dialectic in nature. The stranger dreamed that he was in the center of a circular amphitheater, which was more or less the burnt temple. Clouds of taciturn students filled the tiers of seats. The faces of the farthest ones hung at a distance of many centuries and as high as the stars, but their features were completely precise. The man lectured his pupils on anatomy, cosmography, and magic. The faces listened anxiously and tried to answer understandingly, as if they guessed the importance of that examination which would redeem one of them from the condition of empty illusion and interpolate him into the real world. Asleep or awake, the man thought over the answers of his phantoms, did not allow himself to be deceived by impostors, and in certain perplexities he sensed a growing intelligence. He was seeking a soul worthy of participating in the universe. After 9 or 10 nights, he understood with a certain bitterness that he could expect nothing from those people who accepted his doctrine passively, but that he could expect something from those who occasionally dared to oppose him. The former group, although worthy of love and affection, could not ascend to the level of individuals. The latter pre-existed to a slightly greater degree. One afternoon, now afternoons were also given over to sleep. Now he was only awake for a couple of hours at daybreak. He dismissed the vast, illusory student body for good and kept only one pupil. He was a taciturn, sallow boy, at times intractable, and whose sharp features resembled those of his dreamer. The brusque elimination of his fellow students did not disconcert him for long. After a few private lessons, his progress was enough to astound the teacher. Nevertheless, a catastrophe took place. One day, the man emerged from his sleep as if from a vicious desert, looked up at the useless afternoon light which he immediately confused with the dawn, and understood that he had not dreamed. All that night, and all day long, the intolerable lucidity of insomnia fell upon him. He tried exploring the forest to lose his strength. Among the hemlock he barely succeeded in experiencing short snatches of sleep, veined with fleeting, rudimentary visions that were useless. He tried to assemble the student body, but scarcely had he articulated a few brief words of exhortation when it became deformed and was then erased. In his almost perpetual vigil, tears of anger burned his old eyes.